Hey guys, Dirt here, and I wanted to talk today about the Robocop figures. Now, back in December, we did an episode of Pop Culture Network, the show, in which I looked at the Robocop 3.0 4-inch figure. And I looked at this figure and I said, this figure's not bad. I said, I kind of like this figure. And a lot of people said, Dirt, you're crazy. They went out, they looked at the toys in their stores, and they said, Robocop has no lips. The paint applications are terrible. It just looks clunky, et cetera, et cetera. They had all these problems with the figure, and that's not what I saw with this figure. So, we're going to take a quick look back at him again today, and then we're going to talk about some of the other stuff that people have been saying about the figures. First of all, they said, it's not the black figure, the 3.0, that's so terrible, it's the 1.0. So, I got the 4-inch 1.0 figure. They said it's not the 4-inch figures, it's the bigger figures, the 6-inch figures. So I got the 6-inch figure. And then, just because I'm an idiot with my money, I went ahead and bought the police cruiser motorcycle with Robocop 3.0. So we're going to take a look at these three today and how they compare with this figure, because this figure, again, is not bad. He's not perfect, but he's, I don't know, 3.5 out of 5, 3.75 out of 5. I mean, he's overall a pretty good figure. Now, there are a couple things I want to point out. So let's jump into the photo tent here and take a look at the figure. One thing I want to point out is that if you look, he has lips. One thing people have been saying over and over is that Robocop doesn't have lips on these figures. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about, because there it is right there. Another big complaint we've heard is about paint apps on this figure, and I don't know if maybe I just got lucky. His visor line is just about perfect. The skin is there. Of course, you got the skin on the hand, but there also are little points, and I don't know how well this shows up on this camera, but there are little red dots painted within, and those are spot on perfect. There are also certain points of the armor that have a shinier coating than the other points, and that's part of, I guess, the look from the film. You know, they want to have some parts that look like standard armor and some parts that look like special armor. So you do have those shinier parts that look a little different. So even though it's one solid piece, it does have that look like it's different pieces put together. And again, no major flaws really with this figure. I don't really see a problem with this figure at all. And a lot of you guys, I've heard you say, well, Dirt, you just kind of like that look because it seems somewhat influenced by perhaps another line, another toy line or movie. It seems like maybe they have keyed in on that a little bit. And yeah, I'm probably guilty of that. Anytime you're going to steal from Tron, you're going to steal from the best, as far as I'm concerned. And so therefore, maybe that does influence me just a little bit, but still, I like it. So, Robocop 3.0 4-inch figure is a perfectly fine figure. I've got no problems with that. So, I'm going to rip open, we've got the silver version. This is Robocop 1.0. We're going to rip him open and take a quick look. And my initial thought is, when I see this in the store, is I go, well, obviously it's probably just the same figure that they put some silver paint app on, so he looks a little different, so they can make a 1.0 and a 3.0 version. But I can tell now that I've actually got this in my hands and I'm taking a closer look, this is actually a different figure. The sculpt is a little different, so we'll compare that here in just a second. But I'm going to rip this open. And now, again, one thing I do actually like, and I will give them credit for, is just having this one little, paper cardboard tie that keeps Robocop in the package, but otherwise there are no invisible rubber bands that you usually have sticking them through. There's not 500 tie downs that you have to undo. It's just one little thing, and he's ready to go. As far as his guns go, the guns are identical to what we saw with the 3.0 figure. Just hop in the tent here real quick. There's his handgun, modified for the new film. Nothing stands out as being different from the other one. He also has this rifle, assault weapon, gun thing, whatever. And again, it more or less looks the same as the one in the other figure. Alright, so now let's take a look at this Robocop 3.0 figure. So, you basically have a version that's keyed in a little bit more to the character from the original film franchise. And he's got the silver but with more black accents on top of him. And I noticed, taking a look at him compared to the other figure, that he in fact does not have lips. The mask actually comes down further over his face and hides more of his face, and the place where the mouth would be that tiny little gap right in between the chin strap and the helmet. So they just didn't put anything there. So I guess if you want to say that he should have a tiny little mouth of some sort there, you could say that, but I mean, otherwise I don't know that it's really that big a deal, especially on a figure this small. But if we take a look at the bulk of the figure, he is a little bit bigger and bulkier. I'm not sure why I put this other Robocop back in his case, but let's get him out here. If you take a look, you can see that the armor is actually different. It is a bigger, bulkier plate on his chest. This division line underneath, which is reminiscent of how the original Robocop looked in the franchise, is there, which on here it's very muted and understated. It's very smooth. Here it stands out a little more. You can see the arms are bigger and bulkier. The forearms are bigger and bulkier. The legs are a little bit bigger and bulkier as well. So yeah, overall, it is a different sculpt. It is bigger and bulkier, and it stands out as being a little different. Now, as far as the paint app goes, everything on this one more or less looks fine. You've got the red dot, you've got the visor line, which is spot on, you've got the skin, you've got the divisions between the silver and the black, and all that looks fine. You've got a little bit of accent in there, and you can see there is a little bit where, because it's down in a depressed area, because it's painting inside that part, it is kind of, I don't know if you want to say smudged, but it is kind of, it doesn't necessarily look like it's the cleanest paint application, but it looks fine. You might want to, you know, some people will complain a little bit about that, but overall I think it's okay. I don't really see a problem. Now the legs are a little wobbly. They aren't as tight as maybe they should be, but they still move. He can still, you know, get into the basic poses that you want in your figures. I still wish there was some sort of wrist articulation. There is not, and that is kind of a problem. It makes it hard to do some of the things you want to do with him, the way you pose him or get him to balance. But otherwise, he's got everything going on that you want in one of these types of figures. Although I will complain, again, there are no holes for a figure stand, but we can always Dremel some if we really want some on there. So, you know, he's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but this 4-inch figure compared to this 4-inch figure, they're fine. I really don't see any reason to complain about either of these figures. And I don't know who is out there making the most noise about you know, how terrible these figures are. I think a lot of people just don't like the idea that they're rebooting the movie, and so they're just kind of pissed off about that and they're complaining. But these figures themselves, you know, they have the range of motion that you would more or less expect. I think the hips maybe could have been a little more flexible, but I mean, Robocop's not doing like judo kicks or anything like that, so you don't have to worry too much about how the hip is going to be moving around. But you know, otherwise the legs move, you know, no ankles, no wrists, but still overall I think these guys are okay. I don't see a problem with these 4-inch figures. So I'm still gonna, you know, say that these are okay. I like these figures. I don't have a problem with that. Alright, so now that leaves the bigger size figures, these 6-inch figures. Now I didn't get a Robocop 1.0 in these size figures just because they didn't have any. But I did get the black one here, and he does light up a little bit on top. But otherwise, you know, he's pretty much just your basic figure. It's not the talking one or anything like that. This is just your regular guy, so. Alright, and again, just one little tie here, this little clothy recycled paper tie down, and that's it. Pops right out. He's got the same weapons as the smaller size figure. So let's take a look at those in the tent. We do have his gun here, which compared to the smaller one, it is, you can tell that it's obviously the same design. It may have in fact been a single 3D model in the machine that they just simply scaled down and put on the assembly line. But again, it looks nice. I like this gun. That's cool. We've got his bigger assault rifle type gun, and again, the little one for comparison, virtually identical. I don't think, there are some small things I can see here in the detail on the side there where it doesn't look like they just used the same one and scaled it down in a 3D printer, so I guess maybe it is a different sculpt or something of that nature. But it's got the OCP logo on the clip, just like on here. Is that a clip or a magazine? I forget. I know the terms are supposed to be different. OCP on both sides, and it looks fine. So now let's get to the meat and potatoes of the controversy. Here is the big Robocop 3.0, and let's put him here in the tent. First up, he does have this button on the front which lights up, light up visor. Do Robocop's eyes light up? I don't know, but you know, again, knowing my penchant for characters that do light up, I don't have a problem with it. I kind of like the gimmick, generally speaking. But let's take a look at the figure himself. Now, while I said you can look at this little guy and see that yes, he does in fact have lips, this big guy, he does not. This seems to be where a lot of the complaints are coming from. This bigger size character actually seems to have less detail. His face is just one big blop. And I guess if you squint hard enough, you can see that there's a little bit of a mound here. There's a little bit of some kind of protrusion. I don't even know what the term is for, but it's very subtle and it's very soft. And if it is a mouth, it's like the mouth on The Question from DC Comics. It is just a blump in a mound of flesh. So that is definitely an issue. People complaining about these figures not having lips. This is probably what they're seeing, that they're saying has no lips, and yeah, that does not look fantastic. Similarly to the smaller size figure, they have put a glossy sheen on certain parts of the armor and not on the other parts, so you do get that distinction between them, so it does look like these are different pieces piled on top, which, I mean, it's fine. In a figure this size, let's see, these joints are really tough and they don't have a whole lot of motion. The smaller 4-inch figures had more motion than this guy has, and there's not a whole lot there. The elbow moves more or less like you would expect. It's very tight, but on a bigger figure like this, there's no wrist, which seems a little awkward. Same on this side. Not a whole lot of range of motion for the shoulder. And you've got the same elbow. It's very tight right on here, but I mean, that's good. Hopefully it'll last longer. But again, the elbow, or the wrist does not move. Now, if we take the gun, stick it in his hand, and you can even maybe put the finger in there in the trigger spot. Yeah, and so, I mean, that more or less is okay. Like, I don't see a big issue. I think that looks fine for the most part. So I don't see a real problem with the gun fitting in the hand. I just wish that the wrist had some articulation here. That is a bit of a problem. But I'm more worried about the shoulder. That shoulder not being able to move up, that's just pretty terrible for a toy in this day and age of this size. Now the legs, the hips, again, kind of do the same as the 4-inch figure. They have about the same range of motion, which, I mean, it's a standing character. He's not doing figure 4 leg locks or anything, so, I mean, that's okay. The knee twists and bends, it's fine. But again, there's nothing in the ankle. And this is a problem because a lot of times when you're posing, the problem with getting them to stand and hold up comes from that ankle. So not having any articulation in that ankle is not the best thing, especially if you're going to try to put this on a shelf and pose it, and you need it to be somewhat flexible so you can move it around. That is not very good. So more or less, the 6-inch figure is the same as the 4-inch figure, but the 4-inch figure has better range of movement in the shoulder than the bigger figure does. And the lack of articulation in a smaller figure isn't that big of a deal. In the bigger figure, it is. There should be a waist, something to twist. There's no twist. There's no give. There's nothing there. Nothing in the wrists. Nothing in the ankles. So this figure, he's basically just a big blob. The armor looks fine, and again, that may be just straight out of the CGI files from the movie. They may have just put them in a machine and figured out how to make a toy out of it. The sculpting is more or less, you know, the same level of detail as what we get in the 4-inch figure. You would think there'd be more because it's a bigger figure. There really isn't, but that mouth, that lack of mouth just does look a little creepy. And not being able to really pose him a whole lot because of the problems with the shoulders and because there's nothing in the wrists or in the ankles really detracts from the figure. So while this one I'd say overall is fine, I have no problem with this figure. This figure is just a big lump of not a whole lot to get excited about. So I think that's where a lot of your controversy is coming from people saying they hate these figures. This bigger size figure that people have come to expect a higher level of detail with a Legends or a Classics line or something along those, they want more to it than this, and this just doesn't deliver that same level. On here, you can kind of get away with not having waist and ankle. You know, it's one of those things. It makes the figure look a little bit better to not have that in there. It keeps him tighter, and plus he's smaller, so he just doesn't do as much. Although it would be nice to have like a G.I. Joe level of articulation in these figures. On Robocop, the big guy, a couple things I want to notice, I've taken a closer look, is that he does have some paint blops right there. You can see where the skin paint has blopped off. And his head doesn't actually move at the neck. It moves down here where it meets the body. So this whole thing is moving with him, which, I mean, he's a robot. He's half man, half machine, all cop. So not having a full range of motion in his neck may just go ahead and fit with everything the character stands for, but it does look a little awkward with that figure. So now, Police Cruiser. This is the Police Cruiser with Robocop 3.0, and it's got missile launching action, pullback action, and then it has the words repeated in other languages. I thought there was more to it than that. No, it just turns out I can't read Portuguese. So, let's see. The first thing here is that the box notes that included in this is the EM208 target. The EM208 target is basically taped onto the card here, and it is a cardboard cutout. This was just included in the box. Looks like a prototype version of Robocop. You can see it's just like all robot, but very similar armor. So it kind of fits with that, but looks like you just fold it here at the bottom, and then it can stand up just as a regular piece of cardboard. But for the most part, just kind of junk, nothing to be excited about. This guy, though, we've got our Jiu-Jitsu black belt holding the toy in place, just tied in a knot. We will remove that. I'm going to take a look at this police cruiser. And here's one thing that's kind of awkward. So I remove the tie so that this is loose so I can pull them out of the plastic, but they've put one of those invisible bands around the wrist, which goes into the packaging and is all tied up in here somehow. So I'm going to have to take it off of the gun and loop it around so it can go out the back, so it can come out the front to let go of his wrist so I can actually get him out of the package. That's a little awkward, and probably not the best idea. But let's see if we can do it here without actually hurting the figure or the gun. That's kind of stupid, but what are you going to do? Okay, so now we've got a Robocop, we've got a motorcycle, we've got a missile that latches in there, and we've got his pistol. Now the pistol was wrapped in one of those bands in order to keep it right there in his hand, and if you take a look at this hand, he's got almost like a lobster claw type thing going on here. It is not the same sculpt that we see on the regular figures here. I mean, the regular figures have what looks more like a real hand, whereas this looks like, I don't know, the dude from Futurama, Zoidberg. And if we take the gun doesn't really stick. Like, you can fit it on there, but it's not in there very tightly, even though you can get that finger into the guard there and put it on the trigger. It's still really loose and just falls right out. So that's not the best thing there if we take a look at it. If we pull off the figure and just take a look at the bike here, the old Robocop cartoon show had a motorcycle, and I know the motorcycle is a big part of this new movie that they're doing. They have all these shots of him driving around on the motorcycle. For the most part, you know, it looks fine, nothing special. You can shoot the missile, and there you go. Pull back and run action. It's everything you expect. Let me kind of move this down a little bit, and woo! Balances pretty well. The wheels are very thick, so that it can balance, and so that's not an issue. But overall, nothing very exciting. Although, I guess if you can kind of see in there, I'm not sure how well this shows up, but there are actually handlebars underneath as a separate piece underneath the shield here. So you can actually take the figure here. He's got a hole in his hand, and that hand can actually fit around the handlebar there, and it makes him hold on so that he doesn't go flying off while he's driving. So no problems with the motorcycle. Motorcycle paint application looks fine. No drips or bloops or anything like that on it. So overall, it's okay. Nothing special, but it is not terrible. So that brings us to this figure. This is how he was sitting on the bike. Looks a little awkward. So let's try to straighten him out here. And he doesn't really straighten. His knees are permanently bent. You cannot fold them back. The feet are permanently stretched forward, so there's nothing you can do about that. His head is permanently angled upward, so you can't fix that. And his elbows are permanently locked. So there's not a whole lot. Maybe if you wanted to do like a swimming thing, you could make it look like he's swimming. If you wanted to do like a crab walk, you can make him do the crab walk. But otherwise, there's not a whole lot you can do. And he's got these crazy ball joint hips, which I guess make it easier for him to fit on the motorcycle. But this kind of weird froggy look thing that he's got going on doesn't really fit in any other way, except maybe if you want to show Robocop taking a crap, you could put a little toilet down there and it could just look like he's dropping metal nuggets. Weird. But one thing I will point out, this Robocop, again, he has lips. He's got a lip line in there, so he at least has lips. And apparently he also has kidney stones and is not doing too good. Let's see if we can if we take our motorcycle and try to put our regular Robocop on it, would this guy fit on the motorcycle? That's a good question. We can take Robo and we can kind of bend him around here. His hand has that same gap in there, so we can put it on the handlebar. One thing I was really hoping for is that, you get the bonus figure with this motorcycle. I was hoping it would be the same thing, but it's really not. And his lack of hip motion does kind of fight against it a little bit. There doesn't seem to be any real good way to stretch his legs around on these pegs and get him to sit in a way that looks anyway natural. Although, if you want to have him do some stunt riding, or maybe taking shots while he's in the saddle, you could do that with this and pose it with the other figure. But yeah, it looks like this figure looks wonky for a reason, and because that's how he's got to be in order to ride the motorcycle. So, wonky figure, you can't do much else with him other than have him on that motorcycle. But on the motorcycle, he looks fine. Like, he looks pretty good on the cycle. It's just when you try to take him off, you realize that you can't do anything else with him. So, if you want a pull back and ride motorcycle to play around with, you're good to go. If you're wanting something that you could put your other Robocop on, it's just not going to play out in the way that you hope. And the motorcycle itself, again, just a big blop of plastic, just a big thing. There's not a lot of parts to it. It does exactly what it's supposed to do and nothing else, and it's not really good for anything other than what it was designed for. So you're not going to buy these to put your Joes on to have them driving around or do anything special with. It's just it is what it is. Although the one thing I find amazing about this is that for this being the police cruiser motorcycle he's on, there's no OCP branding. I thought for sure there'd be like an OCP logo in here, maybe along in here, on the back maybe, and especially there should be one on the front, and there's nothing. So I don't know if that's how it is in the movie, or if it's just something that they've overlooked making this toy, but there you go. So what have we learned today? Well, I think we've learned that your regular 4-inch Robocop really isn't that bad. And the silver one, the Robocop 1.0, is also pretty good. I don't really see a reason to complain about these figures. These, for the most part, are okay for what they are, being smaller figures. This bigger 6-inch figure is not very good. I'm not going to say it's the worst figure I've ever played, because I've gotten bootlegs from the dollar store and whatever, and those are complete garbage. But these, it's okay, but it's way overpriced for what it was. If this was $10, I could see them getting away with how it's made and the somewhat lack of articulation and some of that stuff. But because it is a more expensive figure, I just don't think it's going to really endear itself to anybody's hearts. It's fine for displaying. You know, I'll put it on my shelf with my other Robocop stuff. I know a lot of people complained it's not in scale with the NECA stuff, and a lot of people complain, well, it's not as good as the NECA. Well, yeah, a lot of stuff's not as good as the NECA. It's NECA. NECA looks nice. Jada Toys is not going to make their first line of figures that look as good as NECA. But it is well sculpted. And so I think the look of it is nice, even though it does have that nothing mouth there. And then as far as this motorcycle goes, unless you're really a freak for the motorcycles, I don't see why you'd want to buy this. I was looking forward to this just because I have the old Kenner Robocop motorcycle, so this is going to go right next to that one in my display, and as far as that goes, it's okay for that. But I mean, really, this is nothing special, nothing to get excited about, and so don't even worry about that. And the figure it comes with, he's just pooping. I don't know what else to say. He is pooping. So that's going to do it for this show, guys. I want to thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out popculturenetwork.com for more toy reviews, comic reviews, things like that. You can check me out every week doing the Comic Book Chronicles. You can come back for the show with myself and Killen. You can also check out some of the other great stuff that we're doing. We've got some podcasts in the work. We've got written comic reviews with Tim Dog from theclicknation.com. He's working in cooperation with us on some of that stuff. We got Mr. TF Prime doing his stuff. I think Nick Federico is still alive out there, but I haven't heard from him for a while. Maybe he's dead. I hope not. We've got Nick Ochoa is going out to some toy shows. He's been doing some photography for us, so we've appreciated that. So, I mean, there's lots of stuff going on the website. Scotty Cash is always doing his crazy DVD reviews because he gets like 1 million of them in the mail. So make sure you look for all of that crazy stuff as well. And again, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.